Hello students, after the holidays, I'm here with another online lecture. We will stay with the topic of Jewish question, but today we will be more focused on actual story of two Slovak Jews, Vrba and Wetzler, who wrote famous Auschwitz Protocol. It was the report about horrors of the Auschwitz, the concentration camp. Well, why was such report even needed? Nobody really knew what was happening in the camps because Nazi made a great job with their propaganda where they faked the conditions that was in the camp. They filmed a lot of such short movies, like short documentaries. How is it going in the concentration camp? Here is, for example, one of them. You have it in your presentation. Vrba and Wetzler report was not the first of its kind. The first report about the Auschwitz and what was happening inside it was Witold Pilecki's report. Witold Pilecki was a Polish journalist. He was an educated young man who was a volunteer for resistance operation. That operation involved being actually imprisoned in the Auschwitz to gather intelligence. That sounds really unbelievable that somebody would just go there voluntarily. Witold Pilecki was not a Jew. He was just enemy of the regime. That's why he was sent there. While he was imprisoned in Auschwitz, he organized the resistance movement. This was like part of his mission, and he secretly sent messages informing the Western allies of Nazi atrocities at the camp and so on. His job was to start resistance movement, so organize all of the people that are inside to gather intelligence and to send it to the exile government. So the Poland also had their exile government in London, as the Czechoslovakia had. Okay, so he was informed about these horrors already in 1942, so soon as, for example, the Slovak transport started. Witold Pilecki later escaped in April 1943, and he also left to fight in the Warsaw Uprising. So he didn't leave for his freedom, he just felt that he can be more useful somewhere else. So he joined the Warsaw Uprising. The very sad ending to this story of survival of the Auschwitz, the survival of Warsaw Uprising, is that he was killed shortly after the war by the new government. Witold Pilecki remained loyal to the London-based Polish government, so he was Western orientated, and after the communist coup, he was executed for this cooperation with London-based government. He was killed after show trial in 1948. Show trial is really what it's its name. So it's trial where you already know your sentence. So the trial is just made for public. Everybody knows what is going to happen. So there's just evidence which is fake, and everything is made just for the public to make you the enemy of the state. So Witold Pilecki was executed for treason, even though the Allies had known since November 1942 that Jews were being killed in masses in Auschwitz, just thanks to Witold Pilecki. It was a really sad story what happened to him, but he was not the only one. There were many stories like this one. So people who were cooperating with London, with Western allies, and only because they didn't choose Moscow as the center of the resistance, that's why they were later executed, even though they were war heroes. But let's go back to the stories of two Slovak Jews, Vrba and Wetzler. These two were basically chosen by the resistance in Auschwitz, formed by Witold Pilecki. So it was not their own decision that they would like to escape. Of course, everybody wanted to escape, but this decision was made after lot of discussion because Vrba and Wetzler were Slovaks. When there was discussion about where these Jews should escape and write a report about what is happening, Slovakia was chosen. Mostly because they had a lot of connections on the resistance, so they knew some people that could create safe place for two people who escaped. Okay, so Slovaks would be inconspicuous. It's the easiest for them to escape and to find some place where to stay, so nobody would notice them. Okay, because there's nothing odd about two Slovaks going somewhere. Okay, you can't tell that somebody is really Jew just by their appearance. Alfred Wetzler was a little bit older, and that's why he was chosen as the first one. And actually, in the very beginning, there was another person who should go with Wetzler. I don't actually know if that one was wounded or had some other thing why he couldn't go, but the second choice was Rudolf Vrba. So these two were chosen by the resistance. They did not escape for their own freedom, so they were sent to deliver a report about genocide, so that the killing is actually made with really industrial methods, and it just has to stop. This message halted the deportation of Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz, so it saved so many lives. Vrba and Wetzler escaped the Auschwitz on April the 10th, 1944 to Žilina, where they were hiding a Jewish family protected by presidential exception. We know that these presidential exceptions were in Slovakia, and these Jews were always willing to help in a lot of cases. Now I want to tell you something about how these two managed to escape the Auschwitz. This plan was made by the resistance, so it was not made just by Wetzler or by Vrba. They were just two that had some points, but the plan was really strategically made by all of the people that were in the resistance. There was a pile of wooden planks that was stacked outside the camp perimeter that was to be used for construction of a new facility. You know, the camp has something like inner camp and outer camp, so there are more layers of the walls, of gates. Okay, can you imagine it? At least. So in the outer camp, so the outer layer, there was this pile of wooden planks, and there were new facilities to be constructed. They hid in a cavity in the middle of this wooden pile, and they waited for the SS guards to conclude a mandatory 3-day search. Immediately, in the evening, when they were counting all of the prisoners, they knew that these two are missing. So immediately after they searched the camp and they didn't find them in the cavity, they were searching in the surroundings of the camp. When they didn't find them for 3 days, they basically gave up because the Nazis were thinking that these two are really far away by now. But this was the only time when they escaped. So after the Nazis just gave up, they managed to flee the camp. Family who was covering them came up with kind of good idea for secret place. This was in old hospice. It's on Holeho Street, and there is like a memorial of Vrba and Wetzler. By the way, there's also every year hiking between Auschwitz and Žilina exactly to this hospice, and it's Vrba Wetzler Memorial, so you can imagine how long trail it actually is to walk. In this hospice, the report was written, and it was an attempt to estimate the numbers and the most detailed description of the gas chambers to that point. You know, they wanted to be really specific so everybody would trust them. You know, in that situation, when just few people trusted Witold Pilecki's report, they had to be really, really specific. So they made a lot of drawings of the camps. They were trying to give really specific names. They were drawing a map of the chambers. They were drawing the camp drawn the map of facilities. So they were saying, for example, exact numbers, how many women live in, for example, facility B. So it was really detailed. It was the most detailed description until people really seen this, so until the camp was liberated. The publication of parts of the report in June 1944 is credited with helping to persuade Miklos Horthy to halt the deportation of Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz. So it saved the Hungarian Jews. That's why this was made by the resistance. So all of the Jews that were already in the camp from Slovak state, from Poland, from Germany, they decided to help them because there were just transports planned already. But in fact, even after this report, there are still many of those who read it and still did not believe it. That's because imagine that you wouldn't know, that you wouldn't seen actual photos of the Auschwitz, or probably you visited it yourself. You know, it's really unbelievable when somebody would just say it to you for the first time. Here I have some of the pictures. So I will start now from the right. You have there Vrba Wetzler. He's the older one on the left. And you have Rudolf Vrba, which is the other one with black hair on the right. And behind them, there are some of their drawings, which I have also in another pictures. So just parts of them. So you have, for example, these plans over there. So you have rough ground plan of crematoria, types 1 and 2 in Birkenau. So they made it really specific. They, for example, drawn a high chimney and how many furnaces were there, how many gas chambers, also the map of Auschwitz and Birkenau, so these districts of the camp, and where the barbed wire was and everything. So they made it really, really specific. And the last picture is a map. It's not whole map because I didn't manage to put it to the presentation in its original size, but it was their trail from Auschwitz to Žilina. So you can see just Čadca in the bottom and Bielsko-Biała in the north. So just little higher there's Auschwitz, and under Čadca there's Žilina. So you can see also the railway, how it was going. So the transport were coming from Žilina to Auschwitz, and you can see the red arrows. So this was trail of these two Slovak Jews. Okay, here is another picture, and this is like memorial on railway station. Čiže máte napísané presne aj meno teda toho človeka, ktorým pomáhal. Bol to Ondrej Čanecký, ktorým poskytol pomoc a úkryt. Aj vďaka nemu teda vznikla táto správa o priemyselnom vyvražďovaní Židov. Okay, so this was made by Slovak Railways, and this is on the building of railway station. The other thing I would like to tell you about, and it's connected to the Jewish question, is the title or the award Righteous Among the Slovaks. Well, the actual award is named Righteous Among the Nations, but we also have a lot of people that were awarded this title. So it's an international honorific award for saving the lives of the Jews. This award is given by the State of Israel and Yad Vashem Museum. So the Museum of the Holocaust of Jews, so Shoah. In Slovakia, there were more than 500 people who were awarded this prize. And there were many who did not succeed and died trying to help. So only 500 people were awarded. But it doesn't mean that only these 500 people helped. There were a lot of people who helped, survived, and didn't get the prize, and there were many people who helped the Jews, but their whole families were killed because of doing so, because they were trying to do something and not just to stay quiet. From the very beginning of the Slovak state, there were many people who did not agree with the regime, and they were determined to fight it. Everybody in his or her own way. I feel it like the responsibility to mention that there were a lot of Slovaks that were manipulated. They joined Hlinka Guard, they were really cruel, and they were behaving to the others like to the animals. But there were many other people who showed a great amount of humanity and mercy and just pure good. Some of the Slovaks, for example, were hiding the whole Jewish families. Some of them were helping them to escape to another country where they were not able to hide them. Or there were a lot of priests that were, for example, baptizing the Jews as Christians, and by that saving their lives. There are many, many stories like these. For example, there is Vladimír Kuna, who was a Lutheran priest from Liptovský Mikuláš, and he saved 26 Jewish children. He was awarded that prize. And there are so many stories like this one. A lot of stories were published by Postbellum. I hope you've heard of this organization, and they are publishing great stories of 20th century. So they are publishing stories about Slovak state, but also about the period during the communism in Czechoslovakia. So they are just writing about ordinary people who became heroes. And I would like to give you homework. I will specify it in Google Classroom, but I would like you to find one story about such hero that was maybe awarded a prize. Doesn't need to be, okay, but just from Slovak state. We can later specify in Czechoslovakia during communism when we will study this topic, but now I would like you to search for these people, because I think they deserve to be talked about, to mention them, because they were actual heroes during the dark age of Slovak state. Okay, then we will discuss it. I'm looking forward to your stories. Also, you can use this quarantine to discuss it with your parents. If they know something about it, maybe that they will remember some story from your family about your grandparents or great-grandparents, and that would be really great to mention something like that. I have also a few stories like this, so we can share it on the next lesson. I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, I wish you a lot of health during these times. Bye.